Your idea is worthless. Your presentation is an embarrassment. And frankly, the fact that you were even allowed into this room is a failure of security that I intend to address with building management before the day is over. The words land like stones in the glass-walled conference room on the 47th floor of Meridian Capital Partners, where 14-year-old Zora Williams stands at the front of a table, surrounded by 11 men in suits worth more than her mother's annual salary, her homemade prototype clutched in trembling hands, her science fair poster board propped against the wall behind her, and the dream she has carried since she was 9 years old, dying in real time under the fluorescent lights. The man speaking is Victor Harrington III, founder and CEO of Harrington Ventures, net worth $4.7 billion. And he is smiling the smile of someone who has just swatted a fly and found satisfaction in the crunch. His colleagues shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs, but no one speaks, no one objects, because Victor Harrington III does not get objected to in rooms like this, in buildings like this, in a world that has been constructed specifically to ensure that men like him never have to hear the word no from people like Zora Williams. But what Victor Harrington III does not know, what no one in this room knows, except for the quiet woman sitting in the corner taking notes who will later become the most important witness in a lawsuit that reshapes an entire industry, is that in exactly 8 years, 4 months, and 17 days, he will be standing in a different conference room in a different building. They begging the woman Zora Williams has become for a partnership that will be the only thing standing between his company and bankruptcy. And she will look at him with the same expression he is wearing now, and she will say no, and the word will taste like honey and fire and every tear she swallowed on the elevator ride down from this room. The prototype in her hands is made of compressed algae fiber and recycled plant cellulose. She calls it EcoShell. It biodegrades in 47 days. It costs 63% less to produce than traditional plastic packaging. It was developed in her grandmother's kitchen, using equipment salvaged from the dumpster behind the community college chemistry department. And it will, in 8 years, 4 months, and 17 days, be used by 37% of Fortune 500 companies, generate $2.3 billion in annual revenue, and employ 4,700 people in manufacturing facilities built specifically in communities that look like the one Zora Williams grew up in. But right now, in this moment, she is just a 14-year-old black girl from the East Side, wearing her church dress because it is the nicest thing she owns, holding a science project that won 3rd place at the regional fair, trying not to cry in front of men who have already decided she is nothing. Victor Harrington III stands up. He is 6 feet 2 inches tall, 217 pounds, wearing a Brioni suit that costs $14,000 and a Patek Philippe watch that costs $300,000 more. And he walks towards Zora with the casual menace of someone who has never been told his presence is unwelcome. Let me explain something to you, he says, and his voice carries the particular condescension of generational wealth, the assumption that his words are gifts he is bestowing rather than weapons he is wielding. Ideas do not come from places like wherever you come from. Ideas come from research facilities, from Ivy League laboratories, from people who have spent decades learning how to think, not from little girls with glue and cardboard and delusions of adequacy, the prototype. Do you know what I see when I look at that prototype? I see a waste of my time. I see a failure of the grant committee that somehow thought this was worth presenting to actual investors. I see someone who should be focusing on her homework instead of pretending she belongs in rooms where decisions get made. He reaches out and takes the prototype from Zora's hands. She does not resist. She has learned in 14 years of being a black girl in a world that does not want black girls to take up space, that resistance often makes things worse, that sometimes the only way to survive is to let them take what they want and rebuild from whatever is left. Victor examines the EcoShell container. He turns it over in his hands. He presses his thumb against the surface, testing its strength, and something flickers across his face, something that might be recognition, might be surprise, might be the first stirring of an awareness that he is holding something significant. The flicker disappears. He drops the prototype on the floor. He steps on it. The sound of the algae fiber cracking under his Italian leather shoe is the sound of a door closing, of a world deciding that Zora Williams does not matter. Of a story that is supposed to end here, in this room, with this moment, with a man's heel grinding a girl's dream into the carpet. "Get out," Victor says, "and do not come back. Do not apply for grants. Do not submit to competitions. Do not waste the time of people who actually contribute to society. Some people are meant to have ideas. Some people are meant to clean up after the people who have ideas. Learn the difference." Zora picks up the crushed prototype. She picks up her poster board. She walks to the door with her spine straight and her head high, the way her grandmother taught her, the way her mother modeled every single day before the factory closed and the insurance ran out, and the cancer that could have been caught early if anyone had listened was caught too late to matter. She does not cry. She will cry later. Shows in the bathroom of the bus station, in the back of the city bus, in her grandmother's kitchen, when the full weight of what happened finally breaks through the numbness and floods her body with a grief that has no name. But she does not cry here. She will not give him that. At the door, she turns. She looks at Victor Harrington III, at this man who has just crushed her prototype and her confidence and every hope she carried into this room, and she speaks the only words she will say to him for the next 8 years, 4 months, and 17 days. "You are wrong." 3 words, quiet, certain. The voice of a 14-year-old girl who has already learned that being right and being believed are not the same thing, who has already learned that the world does not reward truth, it rewards power, and power is something she does not have yet. Yet, when the door closes behind her, the elevator takes 47 seconds to arrive. She counts them. She has learned to count things when the world becomes too much, a coping mechanism her school counselor taught her. The counselor who noticed the signs of a child carrying too much too young and did what little she could within a system designed to process children rather than nurture them. In the elevator, alone, descending 47 floors to the lobby, Zora looks at the crushed prototype in her hands. The eco-shell container is damaged but not destroyed. The molecular structure holds. The algae fibers, compressed and treated with the process she developed through 3 years of trial and error, 17 failed batches. And countless hours of reading scientific papers she checked out from the university library using her mother's old student ID that somehow still works, have maintained their integrity despite the pressure. She runs her thumb along the crack where Victor's heel came down. She feels the texture. She thinks about tensile strength and biodegradation rates and the specific chemical process that allows organic material to replace petroleum-based polymers at scale. She thinks about her mother, who died 17 months ago, who spent the last weeks of her life in a hospital room surrounded by plastic cups, and plastic tubing, and plastic packaging that would outlast her by 500 years, who looked at Zora with morphine-clouded eyes and said, "Baby, you are going to change the world. I know it. I have always known it." And Zora had said, "I promise, Mama, I promise." And her mother had smiled and closed her eyes and never opened them again. Zora puts the crushed prototype in her bag. She straightens her church dress. She walks through the marble lobby of Meridian Capital Partners, past the security guard who looked at her with suspicion when she arrived, and looks at her with something like satisfaction now, past the fountain and the abstract art, and all the symbols of a wealth she is not supposed to access. She walks out into the street. She takes the bus home. And somewhere in the 47-minute ride back to the east side, between the moment when a woman with kind eyes offers her a tissue because she is crying without realizing it, and the moment when the bus driver announces her stop in the same flat voice he uses for every stop, Zora Williams makes a decision. She will not give up. She will not let this be the end of her story. She will take the crushed prototype and the rejection and the memory of Victor Harrington III's Italian leather shoe, and she will build something so undeniable that the world will have no choice but to pay attention. This is a promise. This is a vow. This is the moment that separates the people who become statistics from the people who become legends. And Zora Williams, 14 years old, orphaned, impoverished, and invisible, chooses to become a legend. 8 years earlier, before the diagnosis and the funeral and the rejection that would define her trajectory, Zora Williams is 6 years old, sitting on her grandmother's kitchen floor. Elsie playing with the containers her mother brings home from the factory, where she works the night shift packaging products for a company that will declare bankruptcy in 4 years and leave 300 workers without severance or health insurance. The containers are plastic. They are everywhere. They are in the cabinets and the drawers and the garbage cans that overflow every week because the city only picks up trash on Thursdays and there is always more plastic than can fit. Granny, Zora says, why does the plastic never go away? Her grandmother, Esther Williams, 71 years old, arthritic hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that has gone cold because she keeps forgetting to drink it, looks at her granddaughter with the particular expression of someone who is watching the future take shape. It never goes away, baby. So because nobody made something better yet. Maybe you will be the one to make something better. Zora picks up a container. She examines it the way she examines everything, with the focused intensity that her teachers mistake for daydreaming and her grandmother recognizes as genius. What if we made it out of something that goes away? Like food, like the stuff in the garden that turns into dirt. Her grandmother sets down her coffee. She looks at this child, this 6-year-old girl, with her mother's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and a curiosity that burns like a pilot light waiting for gas. That would be something, she says. That would really be something. It is not much, a conversation in a kitchen, a question from a child. But it is the seed that will grow into a prototype that will be crushed under a billionaire's shoe, that will be rebuilt into an empire that will change the way the world packages, stores, and disposes of the things it consumes. Esther Williams does not know this. She cannot know this. But she does what she has always done, what her mother did for her and her grandmother did for her mother, stretching back through generations of Black women who understood that their children's dreams were precious cargo in a world that wanted to crush them. She takes Zora to the library. She checks out books on chemistry and biology and environmental science. She sits at the kitchen table for hours while Zora reads and asks questions and conducts experiments that sometimes work and sometimes explode and always, always teach her something new. She saves money from her Social Security check to buy the supplies Zora needs. She makes connections with professors at the community college who agree to let Zora sit in on lectures even though she is too young to officially enroll. She builds, piece by piece, the infrastructure that will allow her granddaughter to become the person she is meant to become. This is what it means to raise a Black girl in America. This is the hidden labor, the unseen investment, the generational sacrifice that makes possible the successes that the world later attributes to individual genius or luck, or the bootstraps that poor people are always being told to pull themselves up by, as if the boots were not handed down from grandmother to mother to daughter, along with the scars and the wisdom and the stubborn refusal to let the world win. Zora's mother, Diana Williams, works the night shift so she can be home when Zora gets back from school. She works the night shift even when she is tired, even when her back hurts, even when the cough that started as nothing turns into something the doctors cannot explain because the factory health plan does not cover the kind of testing that would catch it early. She works the night shift because she believes in her daughter the way her mother believed in her, the way belief is passed down like DNA in families that cannot afford to stop believing. When Zora is 9, Diana starts coughing blood. The diagnosis comes 3 weeks later. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Survival rate, 9%. The doctors speak in percentages and probabilities and treatment protocols. 1. And Diana listens with the calm focus of a woman who has already decided that the numbers do not apply to her, that she will be the exception, that she will not leave her daughter alone in a world that does not want her. She is wrong. The cancer does not care about her determination. The treatment costs more than she earns in a year, and the insurance covers 47%, and the bills pile up like the plastic containers in the garbage cans. Impossible to contain, impossible to ignore, impossible to make disappear no matter how hard you wish. Diana Williams dies on a Tuesday afternoon in March. She is 41 years old. Zora is 12. The last thing Diana says to her daughter is, "Baby, you are going to change the world. I know it. I have always known it." And Zora says, "I promise, Mama. I promise." And the promise becomes a weight and a purpose, and the only thing that keeps her moving forward in the months and years that follow. Esther Williams takes custody of her granddaughter. She is 77 years old now. Her hands shake when she pours coffee. Her eyes are not as sharp as they used to be, but she is still here. She is still fighting. She is still showing up every single day to make sure that Zora has what she needs to become the person Diana believed she would be. They move into a smaller apartment because the old one costs too much. They eat rice and beans 3 nights a week because protein is expensive. They cut coupons and walk instead of taking the bus and make do with what they have, the way poor people have always made do. The way making do is its own form of genius that never gets celebrated in the magazines and newspapers that profile self-made billionaires. Zora keeps working on her project. She calls it EcoShell Now, the name coming to her in a dream about her mother. A dream where Diana is smiling and pointing at a container made of compressed algae fiber, saying, "This is it, baby. This is what you were meant to make." She refines the formula. She tests the biodegradation rates. She documents everything in notebooks that she buys at the dollar store, 3 for $1, filling page after page with chemical equations and experimental results, and the particular kind of obsessive detail that characterizes people who are building something the world does not yet know it needs. At 13, she enters the regional science fair. She wins 3rd place. The prize is a grant application, a chance to present her project to actual investors, and Zora fills out the paperwork with her grandmother's help, photocopying her notebooks and her test results and the photographs that show EcoShell biodegrading in real time, 47 days from solid container to nutrient-rich soil. The grant committee is impressed. They schedule her presentation for the 14th of the month, a Tuesday, in the conference room on the 47th floor of Meridian Capital Partners. Zora spends 3 weeks preparing. She practices her presentation in front of her grandmother, in front of the bathroom mirror, in front of the kids at school who think she is weird for caring so much about plastic. She makes her poster board by hand because they cannot afford the printing services. Or she wears her church dress because it is the nicest thing she owns. She takes the bus downtown with her prototype in her hands and her mother's promise in her heart, and all the hope of a 14-year-old girl who still believes that if she works hard enough and proves herself clearly enough, the world will recognize her value. The world does not recognize her value. Victor Harrington III crushes her prototype under his shoe and tells her she does not belong. She goes home. She cries. She considers, for one dark night, giving up entirely, becoming the statistic the world expects her to become. Another black girl from the East Side who had a dream and watched it die. She does not give up. She wakes up the next morning and looks at the crushed prototype and thinks about tensile strength. Why she thinks about how the molecular structure held even under pressure. She thinks about her mother's last words and her grandmother's belief and all the hours she has already invested in this idea that Victor Harrington III called worthless. She gets back to work. The years that follow are hard. They are hard in ways that cannot be captured in montages or summarized in statistics, hard in the daily grinding reality of poverty and grief and the constant pressure of a world that wants her to fail. Zora finishes high school with a 4.0 GPA. She earns a full scholarship to MIT, the first person from her neighborhood to attend an Ivy League school in 11 years, and she packs her bags with her grandmother's help, leaving behind the apartment and the library and the kitchen, where she first asked why plastic never goes away. At MIT, she is one of 17 black students in the engineering program. She is one of 3 black women. She is consistently underestimated, consistently overlooked, consistently asked to prove herself in ways her white classmates never have to prove themselves. She does not complain. She does not have time to complain. She is too busy working, refining the EcoShell formula, conducting tests in the university labs during off hours because the daytime slots are reserved for graduate students and faculty research, and she is just an undergraduate, just a scholarship kid, just someone who has to fight for every opportunity that others receive by default. She graduates in 3 years. She turns down offers from 6 major corporations because they want to buy her technology, not invest in her vision. Bakim and Zora has learned by now that there is a difference, that selling your idea is not the same as building your future. Her grandmother dies 3 weeks after graduation. Esther Williams is 84 years old. She has been waiting, holding on, refusing to leave until she knows her granddaughter is safe, is launched, is positioned to become everything Diana believed she would be. She dies in her sleep, peacefully, with Zora's hand in hers and the first production sample of EcoShell on the nightstand beside her. "I knew it," Esther says, her last words. "I always knew you would do something extraordinary." Zora buries her grandmother next to her mother in the cemetery on the edge of the East Side. She stands at the graveside in a black dress she bought with her own money. Money she earned from a consulting job that paid her less than her white male colleagues, but paid her enough to survive. And she looks at the 2 headstones and thinks about the women who made her possible. She does not cry. She has learned by now that tears are a luxury she cannot afford, that grief must be channeled into purpose, or it will consume her entirely. She walks away from the cemetery with the EcoShell sample in her pocket. She walks toward the future her mother and grandmother built for her with their labor and their love and their stubborn refusal to let the world win. The next 5 years are a blur of 18-hour days and rejected applications and investors who look at her the way Victor Harrington III looked at her, with the assumption that she is wasting their time. i.e. that she does not belong in rooms where decisions get made, that her skin and her gender and her zip code disqualify her from participating in the world of money and power. She applies for 47 grants. She is rejected 41 times. The 6 grants she receives total less than her former classmates receive in signing bonuses when they take jobs at the companies that tried to buy her technology. She takes the money and she stretches it, and she builds a prototype facility in the basement of an abandoned community center on the east side, the same neighborhood she grew up in, the same blocks where her grandmother walked her to the library, the same streets where her mother took the bus to the night shift that eventually killed her. She hires 5 employees. 4 of them are women. 3 of them are from the east side. And all of them are people the corporate world has overlooked, people with skills and determination and dreams that have been crushed under the same shoes that crushed Zora's prototype. She pays them living wages. She offers health insurance. She creates the kind of workplace she wishes had existed for her mother, the kind that might have caught the cough before it became cancer, the kind that treats workers like people instead of costs to be minimized. The company grows. EcoShell containers pass every test the EPA requires. They perform as well as petroleum-based plastics in every metric except cost, and the cost is lower, 63% lower, because the raw materials are agricultural waste and algae that can be grown in bioreactors instead of extracted from the earth. The first major client is a regional grocery chain that wants to reduce its environmental footprint. The contract is worth $300,000. Zora uses the money to expand production, hire more workers, build capacity for the future she can see coming even if no one else can see it yet. The second client is a restaurant chain. The third is a cosmetics company. The fourth is a tech giant that wants sustainable packaging for its devices. Each contract builds on the last. Each success opens doors that were closed before. Each dollar earned is reinvested in capacity, in people, in the infrastructure of an empire that Zora Williams is building one decision at a time. And then the Forbes profile comes. The journalist is a young black woman named Tamara Jackson, who grew up 3 blocks from Zora's old apartment. She wants to tell the story of EcoShell, the story of a 14-year-old girl with a science project who became a 22-year-old CEO with a $1 billion valuation. Zora agrees to the interview because Tamara asks the right questions, because she understands that the story is not about individual genius, but about systemic barriers and the women who built bridges across them. The article goes viral. It is shared 4.3 million times in the first week. It includes a photograph of the crushed prototype, which Zora still keeps on her desk, and a quote from Victor Harrington III's presentation that day, words he does not remember saying, because men like him do not remember the people they destroy. The world wakes up. Investors who rejected Zora's applications 5 times suddenly want meetings. The corporations that ignored her cold calls for years suddenly want partnerships. The same rooms that told her she did not belong are now desperate to have her name on their letterhead. Zora takes some meetings. She rejects others. She has learned to be strategic, to choose partners who share her values, rather than just her interest in profit. She builds a board of directors that is 60% women, 40% people of color, and 100% committed to the mission of replacing petroleum-based plastics with sustainable alternatives. The company is valued at $1.2 billion on her 23rd birthday. By her 25th birthday, it is valued at $2.3 billion. She is the youngest black woman to reach billionaire status in American history. The magazines call her a visionary, and the newspapers call her a disruptor. The business schools write case studies about her strategy, her leadership, her ability to build something from nothing. Zora reads none of it. She has work to do. She has promises to keep. She has a grandmother buried next to a mother, buried next to a dream that did not die when a man stepped on it in a conference room 8 years ago. And then, one Tuesday morning, 8 years, 4 months, and 17 days after Victor Harrington III crushed her prototype under his shoe, Zora Williams receives a meeting request that makes her smile for the first time in weeks. Harrington Ventures wants a partnership. Victor Harrington III wants to invest. The same man who called her worthless is now calling her essential, and the irony is so perfect, so poetic, that Zora almost does not believe it until her assistant confirms that yes, this is real, this is happening. The world has finally bent far enough that the powerful must come begging to the people they once dismissed. She schedules the meeting for 2 o'clock on a Thursday, the same time as the presentation he destroyed 8 years ago. She wears a suit that costs more than his watch. She sits in the conference room at EcoShell headquarters, the building she owns on the east side, the building she built with the labor of her mother and grandmother, and every person who believed in her when the world did not. Victor Harrington III arrives with 3 lawyers and a desperation he cannot quite hide. His company is failing. The petroleum-based packaging industry is collapsing under the weight of environmental regulations and consumer demand for sustainability. EcoShell owns 47% of the sustainable packaging market. Without a partnership, Harrington Ventures will be bankrupt within 18 months. He does not recognize her. 8 years have passed. She was 14 then. She is 22 now. She was wearing a church dress then. She is wearing a custom suit now. She was trembling then. She is still now, perfectly still. The calm of someone who has already won and is simply waiting for the other person to realize it. Ms. Williams, Victor begins, and his voice carries the same condescension it carried 8 years ago, dulled now by desperation but still present, still assuming that his words are gifts he is bestowing. Mike, I want to start by saying that Harrington Ventures has always believed in sustainable technology. Zora holds up her hand. He stops. "Do you remember me?" she asks. Victor blinks. He looks at her face. He searches his memory, the vast archive of people he has dismissed and destroyed over the course of his career, looking for the specific file that matches this face, this voice, this moment. "I am sorry," he says. "Should I?" Zora reaches into her desk drawer. She pulls out the crushed prototype, the EcoShell container that has sat on every desk she has ever had, a reminder of what happens when people underestimate her. She places it on the table between them. "Your idea is worthless," she says, her voice even. "Your presentation is an embarrassment, and frankly, the fact that you were even allowed into this room is a failure of security that I intend to address with building management before the day is over." Victor's face goes white. The blood drains from his skin as the memory returns, as he realizes who she is, what he did, how the words he spoke 8 years ago are now being spoken back to him by the person he tried to destroy. "This is the prototype you crushed," Zora says, "the one you called worthless. The one you stepped on with your Italian leather shoes while telling me I should learn to clean up after people who have ideas instead of pretending I could have ideas of my own. Do you remember now?" Victor does not speak. His lawyers do not speak. The room is silent with the particular silence of power shifting, of histories being rewritten, of the moment when the oppressor realizes they have become the supplicant. She continues. "Your company is failing because you built it on the assumption that the world would never change, that petroleum would always be cheap, that consumers would never care about the planet, that people like me would never be in positions to compete with people like you. You were wrong about all of it. You were wrong about me. You were wrong about my idea. You were wrong about who belongs in rooms where decisions get made. I am not going to take your meeting," Zora says. "I am not going to invest in your company. I am not going to save you from the consequences of your own failure. But I am going to tell you what you told me 8 years ago. Get out, and do not come back." Victor Harrington III stands. His lawyers stand. They file out of the room in silence. Defeated, diminished, smaller than they were when they walked in. At the door, Victor pauses. He turns back, and for a moment, there is something in his eyes that might be remorse, might be recognition, might be the first stirring of an understanding that his wealth and his power were never the measure of his worth. "I am sorry," he says. The words are small. They are inadequate. They cannot repair what he broke or restore what he took. But they are real, and Zora hears them, and she nods, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement, in the recognition that even monsters are sometimes capable of recognizing their monstrousness. "Sorry does not change anything," Zora says, "but it is a start." The door closes. Victor Harrington III walks out of her building, out of her life, Out of the story, she is writing for herself and for every black girl who has ever been told she does not belong in rooms where decisions get made. Zora sits alone in the conference room. She picks up the crushed prototype and turns it over in her hands, feeling the cracks, the fractures, the places where the pressure almost broke it. She thinks about her mother, who never got to see this day. She thinks about her grandmother, who never doubted for a moment that it would come. She thinks about the promise she made in a hospital room 17 years ago, the promise that became a purpose, that became a company, that became an empire, that became a legacy. She sets the prototype down. She looks out the window at the east side, at the neighborhood that raised her, at the streets where her story began, and she thinks about what comes next. The foundation launches 6 months later. The Diana Williams Foundation for Young Inventors provides grants, mentorship, and resources to young people from underserved communities who have ideas the world is not ready to hear. In its first year, the foundation funds 147 projects. By its 5th year, it will fund over 2,000. 12 of those projects will become companies. 3 of those companies will be worth more than $1 billion. One of those companies will be founded by a 14-year-old black girl from the east side who walks into a conference room with a prototype and a dream and finds, instead of a man who crushes her idea under his shoe, a mentor who sees her value and invests in her future. The cycle continues. The promise is kept. The legacy lives. The same week the foundation launches, Zora receives a letter. It is handwritten, on expensive stationery, addressed to her by name. It is from Eleanor Harrington, Victor's 91-year-old mother, who has been following the story of EcoShell since the Forbes article first appeared. The letter is 3 pages long. It apologizes for her son. It explains that she raised him to be better, that somewhere along the way, he became someone she does not recognize, someone who values money over people and power over purpose. It includes a check for $5 million made out to the Diana Williams Foundation, and a single sentence that makes Zora cry for the first time in years. Your mother and grandmother would be so proud of you. Zora frames the letter. She hangs it next to the crushed prototype on the wall of her office, 2 artifacts from different worlds. 2 reminders that the line between ally and enemy is not always clear, that the children of oppressors sometimes become advocates for the oppressed, that redemption is possible even for those who seemed beyond reach. She thinks about Victor Harrington III. She thinks about the sorry he offered at her door. She wonders if he will change, if the humiliation of begging for help from someone he once dismissed will teach him something about the world he helped create and the world his children will inherit. She does not know. She cannot know. All she can do is keep building, keep hiring, keep investing in people the world overlooks, keep proving that worthless is not a permanent condition, that value is not determined by zip code or skin color or the accident of birth that places some people in conference rooms and others in bus stations. And the story is not over. The story is never over. It passes from generation to generation, from grandmother to mother to daughter to granddaughter, from the women who built bridges to the women who will build cities, from the promise made in a hospital room to the empire it became. Zora Williams is 24 years old. She is worth $2.3 billion. She employs 4,700 people. She has changed the way the world packages, stores, and disposes of the things it consumes. And she is just getting started. The crushed prototype sits on her desk, a reminder and a challenge, a symbol of everything she survived and everything she still has to do. She picks it up every morning. She feels the cracks. She thinks about tensile strength, and then she gets back to work. Have you ever had an idea dismissed because of who you are, rather than what you created? Have you ever stood in a room full of people who assumed you did not belong and had to prove your value in ways they never had to prove theirs? Have you ever been told you were worthless by someone who did not take the time to understand your worth? If you are still listening, if you made it this far, if something in this story touched something in you, I want you to know that the story is not about Zora Williams. The story is about the Zoras we never hear about, the 14-year-old girls with ideas and prototypes who do not have grandmothers to take them to the library, who do not have mothers to work the night shift, who do not have the particular constellation of luck and sacrifice and stubbornness that allowed one girl to become a billionaire while millions of others became statistics. The story is about the systems we built and the systems we can rebuild. The story is about the rooms where decisions get made and who we let into those rooms and what we do when someone walks in with an idea that challenges everything we thought we knew. The story is about you. It is about the choice you make. The next time someone who looks different or sounds different or comes from somewhere different walks into your space with something to offer. It is about whether you see their potential or their poverty, their vision or their vulnerability, their future or their past. Zora Williams is not special. She is not a genius. She is not a unicorn. She is a black girl who refused to let a man in an expensive suit define her value. She is a daughter who kept a promise to her dying mother. She is a granddaughter who honored the sacrifice of a woman who believed in her when no one else did. She is proof that worthless is a word people use when they are afraid of what worthwhile might look like in a package they do not recognize. What will you do with that proof? What will you build? Who will you become? The question is not whether the world will give you permission. The world never gives permission to people who threaten to change it. The question is whether you will take it anyway, whether you will show up with your prototype and your poster board and your church dress, whether you will stand in rooms that were not built for you and claim space that was never meant to be yours. The question is whether you will remember when someone tells you that you do not belong, that belonging is not something you earn. It is something you create, one idea at a time, one day at a time, one refusal to give up at a time. The crushed prototype sits on Zora's desk. The cracks in the surface catch the light. The molecular structure holds. And somewhere, in a conference room in a building she built on the east side, a 14-year-old black girl is presenting her idea to a panel of investors who look at her with curiosity instead of contempt, who ask questions instead of making assumptions, who see potential instead of poverty. The girl is nervous. Her hands shake. Her voice trembles on the first few words, but she does not stop. She keeps going, keeps speaking. He keeps showing them what she built in her grandmother's kitchen with equipment salvaged from dumpsters and dreams inherited from women who came before. When she finishes, there is silence. And then there is applause. And then there is investment. And then there is the beginning of another story, another empire, another legacy being born in the same space where Zora Williams once stood with a crushed prototype and a promise she was determined to keep. The cycle continues. The promise is kept. The future is being built, one black girl at a time, one idea at a time, one refusal to be crushed at a time. And the world, slowly, reluctantly, finally, is learning to recognize the value it spent so long trying to deny.